In the height of summer, when the lowlands burned beneath the sun, mountain temples of medieval China remained cool, silent, and untouched by heat. No fans, no bricks, only wind, stone, water, and trees. The monks didn't build to resist the season, they built to breathe with it. Every timber beam, every carved tile carried the secret of balance. High above the haze, these temples whispered an ancient truth. Peace was not found in escaping the heat, but in learning how to live inside it. In medieval China, mountains were more than sacred. They were living shields against the extremes of weather. Temples were not placed there by coincidence. Builders understood what the air at high altitudes could do. At 1,000 meters above the burning plains, the temperature dropped by 5, sometimes 10 degrees. The wind was thinner, cleaner, touched with moisture from drifting clouds. Surrounding forests acted like green lungs, filtering sunlight, breaking the force of the wind and exhaling mist that cooled everything it touched. Monks who chose such places were not only seeking distance from worldly noise, they were also finding refuge from the heat. A temple clinging to a slope shaded by ancient pines felt almost immune to summer. The air moved freely through open corridors and shadows danced over stone steps damp with dew. From below, pilgrims would see these temples floating in haze, half hidden, half revealed, like islands of stillness in the mountain air. They were both spiritual and practical, sanctuaries for meditation and masterpieces of environmental wisdom. Each stone and wooden beam was placed with an understanding older than science. When one lives high enough, the earth itself helps keep the soul cool. If stone anchored the temple to the mountain, wood gave it breath. Medieval builders used pine, cypress, or fir, timbers that aged slowly and held the scent of resin. These woods absorbed heat by day and released it at night, keeping the interior gentle and stable. Unlike brick or concrete, wood was alive. It expanded, contracted, and quietly breathed. When the air turned humid, it drew in moisture. When the air was dry, it let it go. Walls were never sealed tight, just lattices, beams, and sliding panels that invited the wind to wander through. Inside a wooden hall, the heat softened. The light dimmed. The structure exhaled like a forest, its surface cool beneath one's fingers. Even the sound of footsteps was different, muted, absorbed by centuries of polished floorboards. The monks understood this relationship between material and air. To them, wood was not merely a construction choice, it was a living participant in their meditation. In silence, the temple inhaled the forest's breath and returned it as calm. In that rhythm, man and mountain became one, breathing together slowly through the heat of summer. The secret to coolness often began below the floor. Most temples were raised on stone foundations, leaving a hollow space for air to circulate beneath the wooden planks. This invisible layer of movement acted as a natural insulator, pushing heat away before it could climb. Above, the roofs were vast and curved like waves. Glazed tiles shimmered under sunlight, deflecting heat and channeling rainwater down through carved gutters. The deep eaves stretched far beyond the walls, casting shade that reached even the steps where pilgrims rested. When mountain winds swept through, they entered low, gliding under the elevated floors, and rose gently toward the arching roofs. The whole structure breathed with the landscape, a quiet, continuous exchange between the ground's cool breath and the sky's moving air. The architects of these temples never needed the word ventilation. They learned by observation, the way leaves turned with the wind, the way caves stayed cool. A temple, to them, was a living system, a mountain transformed into architecture. Every column, every beam carried the flow of air like veins in a body. So when the valley burned with summer, the halls above remained calm. Inside, the air moved softly, and even candle flames barely flickered. It was cooling not by force, but by design, an ancient dialogue between structure and wind. The layout of a temple was never random. Its courtyards, corridors, and layered roofs followed both spiritual geometry and practical airflow. The Chinese principle of qi, energy that moves freely when space is balanced, was not only a belief, it was climate control in disguise. Courtyards broke up sunlight, creating alternating zones of shade and brightness. During the day, long corridors shielded the inner halls from direct heat. At night, these same open pathways carried cool air inward. Each courtyard became a quiet heart, where shadows and breezes gathered. Water basins or small ponds were often placed at the centre, their evaporation further softening the air. The temperature dropped most in these inner sanctuaries, where monks meditated and incense smoke drifted slowly across moonlit floors. Wind entered through one gate, turned through columns, and escaped through another, never trapped, always flowing. This cross-ventilation kept the space alive and comfortable, even in mid-July. To walk through such a temple was to move between climates, from warm sunlight to deep shade, from dry air to misted coolness. Nothing resisted the heat. Everything guided it, redirected it, dissolved it. It was cooling by rhythm, not opposition, a choreography of architecture and air. Where there was a temple, there was always water. Sometimes it was a mountain spring diverted into a stone basin. Other times a lotus pond mirrored the sky in stillness. Water was never decoration. It was the heart that cooled both space and spirit. During the day, sunlight shimmered across its surface, while evaporation gently moistened the air. At night, the stored coolness radiated outward, creating a subtle shift in temperature around courtyards and meditation halls. Monks walking barefoot across stone floors could feel that quiet relief, the difference between heat and harmony. Water ran in channels carved along the temple's paths, trickling beneath bridges of wood and stone. Its sound was part of the temple's pulse, mingling with bells and cicadas. It filled silence without disturbing it. In Chinese philosophy, water represented flexibility, the art of yielding without breaking. Architecturally, it performed the same lesson. It balanced what was dry, softened what was hard. A temple without water felt incomplete, like a body without breath. Even now, if one stands beside an ancient pond of a Song Dynasty temple, one can feel how the air shifts, cooler, cleaner, alive with reflection. Water did not simply exist in the temple, it spoke, teaching the air to move slowly, teaching the heat to rest. Around every mountain temple, trees grew as if chosen by intention. Bamboo, pine, cypress, banana, plum, and lotus, all planted not merely for beauty but for balance. Each species served a quiet role in the climate's orchestra. Bamboo bent in the wind, creating shade that moved like flowing water. Banana leaves caught humidity and exhaled it back into the air. Pines and cypresses guarded the roofs with their dense needles, shielding the tiles from direct sun. Even the lotus in the pond had its purpose, cooling through evaporation, calming through sight. Monks tended these gardens daily, trimming, sweeping, watering, but never forcing nature into rigid form. The garden was meditation in motion. Its stones absorbed heat slowly, its moss released moisture softly underfoot. In the afternoon, when cicadas sang and air grew thick, one could sit beneath the bamboo and feel the world cool itself. The sound of rustling leaves became a kind of wind-made prayer. These gardens were not separate from the temple. They were the temple's outer breath. Together, tree and wall, leaf and tile, made a single ecosystem of calm. Through roots, shade and silence, the forest itself became the temple's oldest and most faithful disciple. Monks of medieval China adapted their daily lives to the rhythm of the mountain's heat and cool. Their robes were simple, woven from hemp or coarse cotton, light enough to breathe, yet dense enough to protect the skin from the sun. Colours were muted, ochre, grey or brown, tones that reflected both humility and practicality. The day began before dawn. Work, sweeping courtyards, fetching water, tending gardens was done in the soft morning air before the sun climbed too high. When noon arrived, the temple slowed into silence. The monks withdrew into meditation halls where the air was dim, scented with wood and incense. During the hottest hours, they sat cross-legged, breathing slowly, cooling the body through stillness. Meals were light and cooling, tofu, mountain vegetables, and bowls of green tea. Their food mirrored the philosophy of their lives, moderation as balance, restraint as comfort. Even water was sipped slowly, with awareness of its taste and temperature. By dusk, as winds returned from the valley, the temple came alive again with chanting and the soft ring of bells. The monk's way of living was not resistance but harmony, a daily choreography of movement and rest, heat and shade, body and breath. In learning how to live within the rhythm of nature, they also learned how to keep the heart as calm as the mountain itself. The true coolness of the temple did not come only from its architecture, but from what it inspired within. Meditation halls were built as sanctuaries of air and silence. Walls were plain, windows few, and the floor wide and open. The emptiness was deliberate, a vessel for the sound of wind. Inside, monks sat facing the mountain or the garden, their posture still but not rigid. The faintest breeze through the lattice felt like a living presence, brushing across the skin, stirring candle smoke and vanishing again. To them, this was not just air, it was the breath of the world itself. In summer, when the heat pressed down the valley, meditation became an art of cooling the mind. Breath slowed, thoughts dissolved. The body, once restless, began to feel lighter, cooler, without a single fan or drop of water. They believed that heat and cold were not enemies, but sensations born of imbalance. When the heart was agitated, the air turned suffocating. When the heart was still, even fire could feel soft. Thus they said, "Calm is the wind, and the wind is the mind." Within that silence, the temple itself seemed to breathe, an invisible dialogue between stone, air, and soul. Coolness in a temple was not only physical, it was sensory. Step inside, and the air carried layers of fragrance. Sandalwood drifting from censers, damp wood darkened by centuries, and the faint sweetness of blooming lotus. The smell itself seemed to lower the temperature, calming the heart before the body even noticed. Sounds played their part too. A single bronze bell echoed across the courtyard, its resonance folding into the sound of dripping water. Cicadas sang far away, hidden behind layers of leaves. Wind rustled through bamboo, soft as whispered prayers. Every sound existed in perfect proportion, never loud, never sharp, always dissolving into silence. Touch was another language of coolness. Stone floors felt smooth and cold beneath bare feet. The wooden railing, polished by countless hands, retained a gentle chill. Even the temple's air had texture, neither dry nor humid, but balanced like a breath held between inhale and exhale. In such harmony, one could sense the presence of temperature without suffering from it. The mind quieted, and the heat of the outside world disappeared, replaced by a calm that was almost tangible. Here, coolness was not an accident of architecture. It was an experience, a state of being carefully woven through sound, scent, and silence. The mountain temples of medieval China were never built to fight the sun, they were built to live beside it. Every beam of wood, every stream of water, every gust of wind was part of a greater lesson. Coexistence. To these monks, architecture was not a wall against nature, it was a bridge into it. The temple cooled itself because it moved with the rhythm of the land, lifted by the mountain, shaded by the forest, softened by water, and open to the wind. In this design lay a quiet philosophy that reached beyond comfort. It spoke of acceptance, of living not by resistance but by harmony. To remain cool, one did not need to escape the heat, only to understand it. Even now, when one stands in the courtyard of an ancient temple and feels the breath of wind through pine leaves, that wisdom endures. The world has grown louder, hotter, more hurried, but the mountains still whisper the same truth. Peace is not found in changing the season, but in learning to stay calm within it.